Ladies and gentlemen, listen to me very closely because what I'm about to share can change not just your income, but your influence. See, most people think success is about how hard you work. Others think it's about how smart you are. But let me tell you the truth. Success is about how well you connect. If you can read people, you can reach people. And if you can reach people, you can lead people. You can be the smartest person in the room, but if people don't feel understood by you, they'll never trust you. Trust isn't built on knowledge, it's built on connection. Every human being carries an invisible question into every conversation. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Do I matter to you? The moment they sense that you do, their heart opens. And when their heart opens, their mind follows. That's the foundation of real communication, not words, but presence. You don't win people over with information. You win them over with interpretation. You must learn to listen, not just to what's said, but to what's meant. When someone speaks, there's always a story behind their words. There's a reason for their tone, a meaning behind their silence, a history behind their reaction. Most people listen to reply, but wise people listen to reveal. They listen to find the truth hidden inside the emotion, because behind every harsh word is often a hurt heart. Behind every angry response is usually an unmet need. If you can hear what people aren't saying, you can understand what they're truly saying. Social intelligence is not just about reading faces or studying behavior. It's about discerning the motives, fears, and desires that drive people's actions. When you develop that level of awareness, you begin to navigate relationships with precision. You no longer take things personally. You no longer get easily offended. Instead of reacting, you start responding with purpose. People don't respond to logic first, they respond to emotion. And emotion is what creates movement. When you learn to make people feel valued, respected, and understood, they naturally move toward you. Influence doesn't start with your mouth, it starts with your heart. Because when someone feels understood by you, they're far more likely to understand you. That's why the most powerful communicators are not those who speak the loudest, but those who listen the deepest. When people feel emotionally safe around you, they open up. When they open up, you gain insight. And insight gives you access. If you want to master the art of reading and responding to people, start by paying attention to their patterns. Every person has a pattern in how they talk, how they react, how they protect themselves, and how they express joy or pain. The socially intelligent person studies these patterns, not to judge, but to understand. When you understand, you can communicate with precision. You can meet people where they are instead of trying to pull them to where you are. That's what separates people who connect from people who merely communicate. You can have the best idea, the strongest argument, or the most logical reasoning, but if people don't feel that you care about them, they won't receive your message. Caring is the secret key that unlocks influence. When you genuinely care about people, you start hearing things others miss. You hear the hesitation in their voice. You notice the tension in their posture. You catch the fear behind their excuses. And instead of judging them, you respond with empathy. Empathy doesn't mean agreement. It means understanding. It means saying with your actions, I see you. I get why you feel that way. Once people know that you see them without trying to fix them, they become open to learning from you. Words are powerful, but tone is transformational. You can say the same words with a different tone and get an entirely different response. That's why socially intelligent people are intentional about their tone, their energy, and their timing. They understand that communication is not just about speaking the truth. It's about delivering it in a way that can be received. Sometimes the right message at the wrong moment becomes the wrong message altogether. Timing matters. Emotion matters. Awareness matters. Social intelligence requires humility, the willingness to put your ego aside long enough to understand someone else's experience. The moment you start thinking that you already know what people are feeling, you stop learning. But when you stay curious, when you approach every person as if there's something new to learn from them, your level of understanding deepens. Curiosity builds connection because it communicates interest. People love to feel interesting, and when they do, they open up even more. When people feel misunderstood, they build walls. When they feel understood, they build bridges. Those bridges are where influence flows. You can't lead people who don't trust you, and you can't earn trust without understanding. So if you want to grow your influence in business, leadership, relationships, or life, stop focusing only on what you're saying and start focusing on what people are feeling when you say it. Communication without connection is just noise, but when you master the ability to make people feel valued, respected, and seen, every conversation becomes an opportunity to build trust. Every moment becomes a chance to build influence, and every interaction becomes a step toward transformation. Connection always comes before correction. Most people try to change others through pressure, argument, or authority, but influence never flows from force. It flows from relationship. You cannot correct what you have not connected with. When someone feels attacked, their mind closes. But when they feel accepted, their mind opens. The moment people know you care, they'll let you guide them. The moment they sense judgment, they'll shut you out. Every human being has a defense mechanism built into their heart. That defense drops only in the presence of genuine love, respect, and empathy. You can't plant seeds of truth in hardened soil. You must first soften it with connection. When you focus on connection, you stop trying to be right and start trying to be real. You begin to see that the goal of communication is not victory, it's understanding. The reason most people fail in conversations, in business, in leadership, and even in family is that they try to impose correction before building emotional safety. They talk to people instead of talking with them. Connection says, I'm with you. Correction says, you need to be different. And people will only accept correction from those they believe are truly with them. Think about it when someone corrects you, but you don't feel known or valued by them, it feels like criticism. But when someone who loves you, respects you, and has proven they care about you offers correction, it feels like guidance. The same words can heal or hurt depending on the relationship that delivers them. That's why socially intelligent people invest more time in relationship building than in rule setting. They understand that connection is not a strategy, it's a spirit. It's the posture of the heart that says, I'm here to understand before I instruct. Real connection begins with curiosity. When you approach people with curiosity instead of condemnation, they feel safe enough to reveal the truth about themselves. Most people wear emotional armor because the world has taught them that vulnerability is dangerous. But when they encounter someone who listens without judgment, they begin to lower that armor. Listening is not passive. It's active leadership. Every time you listen deeply, you tell someone that their voice matters. That one act of attention can disarm years of defensiveness. In leadership and relationships, connection is the bridge that carries truth from one heart to another. If the bridge isn't strong, the truth will never make it across. You can have wisdom, insight, or correction that could genuinely help someone, but if your tone, timing, or attitude breaks connection, they'll never receive it. Connection gives you permission to influence. It's the invisible authority that says, you've earned the right to speak into my life. The moment people feel you're speaking at them instead of for them, that permission is revoked. Connection is built through consistency. You don't connect once, you connect continuously. You show up, you listen, you remember small details, you follow through on your word. When people see that your care isn't conditional, that it doesn't vanish when they disagree or disappoint you, they begin to trust. And once they trust, correction becomes welcomed instead of resisted. You don't have to force change when connection has prepared the ground. Connection does the heavy lifting that words alone can't. Most people are trying to change others by talking more. The socially intelligent person changes others by being more patient, more understanding, more self-aware. When you model the behavior you want to see, you give others a living example to follow. Correction through example is more powerful than correction through explanation. You teach best by being the message, not just speaking it. Connection also requires emotional discipline. Sometimes people will misunderstand your intentions. Sometimes they'll reject your efforts to help. You can't take it personally. Stay calm, stay kind, and stay consistent. Social intelligence means knowing that emotions are contagious, yours and theirs. If you remain grounded, you help others regulate their own emotions. If you react with offense or frustration, you multiply their defensiveness. The one who maintains peace in conflict is the one who holds power in connection. Connection thrives where humility lives. When you enter conversations believing you already have all the answers, you destroy the possibility of genuine dialogue. But when you enter with humility, when you acknowledge that you can learn from anyone, regardless of their mistakes or mindset, you invite honesty. People are more likely to receive correction from someone who admits their own imperfections. Perfection intimidates, humility attracts. Before you can correct behavior, you must connect to the heart behind it. Every action has an emotional root: fear, pride, insecurity, hope, or pain. If you address only the surface behavior, you'll never create real change. But when you connect to the emotion behind the action, you can speak to the root instead of the fruit. That's why connection is more powerful than confrontation. Connection doesn't ignore truth, it delivers it with compassion. Connection doesn't mean compromise. It means influence with integrity. It means you can disagree without disrespecting. You can challenge without condemning. You can correct without controlling. When people feel valued, they listen. When they listen, they grow. And when they grow, everyone rises together. Connection turns correction from an argument into alignment, from resistance into relationship, and from conflict into cooperation. You can't read people if you're always talking. The power to influence, to lead, and to build real understanding comes from observation. Observation is the discipline of seeing beyond the surface, hearing beyond the words, and sensing beyond the obvious. Most people go through life reacting to what's said. Very few take the time to study what's shown. Every movement, every pause, every tone tells a story. People are speaking even when their mouths are closed, and those who master the art of observation can hear the message hidden in silence. Observation is not about suspicion, it's about awareness. It's not about judging what people do, but discerning why they do it. The socially intelligent person doesn't rush to conclusion. They slow down to comprehension. They understand that what a person reveals outwardly is often a reflection of what they wrestle with inwardly. When you pay attention to patterns, how someone talks when they're confident, how they breathe when they're nervous, how they change tone when they're uncomfortable. You begin to see truth unfiltered by words. Most people miss opportunities and damage relationships, not because they lack intelligence, but because they lack attention. You can learn more from what someone doesn't say than from what they do say. Silence can scream louder than sound. A forced smile can reveal tension. Averted eyes can expose insecurity. Crossed arms can communicate defensiveness. Observation is the skill that allows you to recognize emotion before it becomes expression. When you can anticipate emotional shifts, you can respond wisely instead of reacting impulsively. You begin to move from confusion to clarity, from reaction to intention. Observation is a skill that must be practiced with humility. The moment you assume you already understand someone, you stop truly seeing them. Every person is a world of experiences, beliefs, fears, and dreams. The more curious you are, the more you see. Curiosity fuels understanding because it keeps you engaged in discovery. When you approach every conversation with the mindset of, there's something I don't know yet, you create space for deeper insight. Socially intelligent people are detectives of human nature. They ask questions, they notice details, and they learn continuously. When you start paying attention to others, you realize that people reveal who they are not just in words, but in patterns. Patterns show up in how people handle stress, success, and disappointment. Some withdraw, others overact. Some joke to hide pain, others dominate conversation to mask insecurity. When you observe long enough, you see beyond performance. And when you see beyond performance, you can lead with precision. Observation gives you the power to meet people where they are rather than where you wish they'd be. Leaders who lack observation always find themselves blindsided. They don't notice the warning signs before conflict, the subtle shifts in attitude before disengagement, or the emotional fatigue before burnout. But those who pay attention can adjust early. They can course correct before a problem grows. Observation makes you proactive instead of reactive. It gives you foresight, and foresight is what separates the wise from the impulsive. Observation is also a mirror. The more you watch others, the more you learn about yourself. Sometimes what frustrates you in others is a reflection of what you haven't dealt with within yourself. The person who talks too much might irritate you because you fear being ignored. The person who withdraws might frustrate you because it reminds you of times you felt abandoned. Observation without self-reflection becomes manipulation. Observation with self-awareness becomes mastery. The quiet mind sees what the noisy mind misses. That's why patience is the secret weapon of the socially intelligent. While others rush to speak, the observer waits, listens, and gathers data. They allow people to reveal themselves over time. They don't interpret one moment as the whole story. They look for consistency. One of the greatest signs of maturity is the ability to withhold judgment until you've gathered understanding. Observation is not about catching people doing wrong. It's about understanding what makes them human. When you walk into a room, practice watching before speaking. Notice who commands attention, who avoids it, who supports quietly, and who seeks validation. The energy of a room tells you more than the words exchanged in it. The observer sees dynamics others overlook: alliances, insecurities, silent leaders, hidden frustrations. When you understand these dynamics, you can navigate any environment with confidence. Observation gives you the social map that others don't even know exists. Observation is the foundation of empathy. You can't feel with people if you don't first see them. When you slow down to notice expressions, postures, tones, and shifts, you train your heart to tune into emotion. Empathy begins with awareness, and awareness begins with observation. Once you've trained your eyes and ears to notice the unspoken, you no longer take things personally. You begin to understand that every reaction is a reflection of a story. Every defensive word is a protection of pain. Every cold attitude is often the echo of past rejection. When you can see that, you stop arguing with behavior and start responding to emotion. Observation is the quiet strength behind influence. It gives you an edge in leadership, sales, communication, and relationships because it allows you to anticipate needs and adjust your approach before tension ever arises. People feel safe with those who understand them, and understanding begins with paying attention. The world is loud with people trying to be heard, but the rare ones who learn to watch, listen, and perceive will always rise above the noise. Reaction is emotional, but response is intentional. The difference between the two can determine whether you create peace or chaos, progress or regret. Most people live in reaction mode. They react to what's said, to how they feel, to what others do. Reaction is automatic. It's what happens when emotion drives the wheel and wisdom rides in the back seat. But when you learn to respond instead of react, you take back control. You stop being ruled by impulse and start being guided by purpose. Response is the pause between the trigger and the decision. It's the moment where wisdom whispers louder than emotion. When you react, you're handing your power to someone else. They push a button and you dance to their tune. But when you respond, you choose your rhythm, you decide how to interpret what happens instead of letting what happens dictate who you become. Reaction is about survival. Response is about strategy. Reaction says, I have to defend myself. Response says, I choose how to represent myself. One keeps you stuck in cycles of conflict. The other keeps you centered in clarity. Social intelligence is not about never feeling emotion. It's about mastering emotion so it doesn't master you. Everyone feels anger, frustration, disappointment, or fear. Those are natural, but wisdom is what decides what you do with those feelings. The emotionally intelligent person can feel anger and still speak calmly, feel frustration and still act fairly, feel disappointment and still move forward with focus. They understand that emotion is energy, and when directed properly, that energy becomes influence. You can't control how others act, but you can always control how you respond. When you react, you speak from the moment. When you respond, you speak from the mission. Every time you choose to pause before replying, you elevate the conversation. You create space for insight to enter. The pause is powerful because it turns chaos into clarity. It gives you time to check your intention before releasing your words. Most broken relationships and missed opportunities don't happen because people lack knowledge. They happen because someone reacted too quickly. Words spoken in reaction may satisfy emotion, but often sabotage connection. Words spoken in response bring alignment and understanding. When you learn to respond, you learn to lead. Leadership begins with emotional stability. The one who stays calm in the storm controls the direction of the ship. People trust leaders who can stay composed under pressure. Every environment, from family to business, mirrors the emotional state of its leader. If you're reactive, your team or family becomes anxious. If you're responsive, they become grounded. Calmness is contagious, and so is chaos. The energy you project sets the tone for how others engage with you. Response requires awareness. You can't choose your response if you're not aware of what you're feeling. Most people react because they haven't learned to recognize the emotion before it explodes. Awareness allows you to label the feeling anger, fear, offense, and once it's labeled, it's no longer in control. Naming the feeling gives you the power to frame it, and once you can frame it, you can manage it. That's why people who understand their emotions don't get manipulated by others. They don't let external noise dictate internal peace. To respond intentionally, you must value purpose over pride. Reaction is what pride does when it feels threatened. It needs to prove something, defend something, or win something. But response is what purpose does when it knows who it is. Purpose doesn't argue to be right. It acts to make things right. The socially intelligent person isn't easily offended because they've learned that offense wastes energy that could be invested in growth. They know that peace is more profitable than pride. In every conversation, you have two choices. You can mirror the energy you receive or model the energy you want. Reactors mirror, responders model. When someone raises their voice, the reactor raises theirs too. When someone criticizes, the reactor defends, but the responder sets a new standard. They choose composure over conflict, direction over distraction. And when you maintain composure, you gain influence. The person who keeps calm when others lose it becomes the emotional leader of the moment. Response doesn't mean weakness. It means wisdom. It's not silence born of fear. It's silence born of strategy. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing until the right moment arrives. The wise don't rush to fill every silence. They let silence reveal truth. Reaction is loud and quick. Response is quiet and calculated. The longer you live, the more you realize that not everything requires your energy. Not every battle deserves your sword. The responder understands that attention is currency and refuses to spend it on what doesn't serve the mission. Responding instead of reacting transforms relationships, negotiations, and leadership. In a heated discussion, when you stay grounded, you create safety. When you choose your words carefully, you build trust. When you act with intention, you earn respect. Over time, people will stop testing your emotions and start trusting your example. That's the power of response. It shifts you from being controlled by the moment to controlling the outcome. Learning to respond begins with inner stillness. Stillness is not the absence of noise. It's the mastery of focus. It's the ability to hear what matters most when everything around you demands your attention. The responsive person listens twice as much as they speak. They observe tone, timing, and energy before acting. They understand that wisdom often hides in the pause, and clarity comes to those who wait long enough to see the full picture. Reaction is driven by the need to be fast. Response is driven by the desire to be effective. Every moment of conflict offers a choice. Will you be a slave to emotion or a steward of intention? The more you train yourself to pause, the more you build discipline. And discipline is the seed of influence. Those who can remain centered when others lose control naturally rise as leaders. Because the one who can control themselves in any situation can navigate any situation. Every person you meet is tuned into one frequency. What's in it for me? It's not selfishness. It's human nature. People are moved by their own desires, needs, and goals. The key to influence is learning to speak the language of value, the language that translates what you offer into what they need. When you understand what people value, you can connect, communicate, and create impact effortlessly. The mistake most people make in business, relationships, and leadership is that they focus on their own agenda instead of tuning in to the desires of others. You can't lead people you don't understand, and you can't serve people you haven't studied. Speaking the language of value means you stop trying to sell your idea, your opinion, or your product and start showing how it helps someone reach their goal. It's not manipulation, it's alignment. You align what you bring with what they believe will improve their life. When you do that, you no longer have to convince People will naturally lean toward you because they see the benefit for themselves. Influence grows when people feel seen, served, and supported in their journey. The moment they recognize that you care about their outcome as much as your own, trust begins to form. Every conversation is an exchange of value. Some people extract value, others add it. The ones who consistently add value become magnets for opportunity. When you bring value into every interaction, you become irreplaceable. People remember how you made them feel, how you helped them win, how you made their problems lighter. Value is not just about information, it's about transformation. When someone walks away from you better, clearer, or more hopeful than they were before, you've added value. The more people experience that with you, the more they want to stay connected to you. To speak the language of value, you must first learn to listen for what people truly care about. Listen for what they complain about, what excites them, what frustrates them, what they dream of. Every emotion they express is a clue to what they value. When you hear someone say, I just wish people would understand me, you've learned they value empathy. When they say, I need to get more done, they value productivity. When they say, I'm tired of being overlooked, they value recognition. Once you identify what someone values, you can tailor your words and actions to connect with that core desire. Communication becomes effortless because you're speaking their emotional language. Value is also about perception. It's not what something is worth to you, it's what it's worth to them. You might offer something incredible, but if it's not framed in a way that matters to the listener, they won't see it. That's why clarity matters. The socially intelligent person knows how to frame ideas in a way that connects with people's priorities. You don't talk about features, you talk about benefits. You don't talk about yourself, you talk about their results. You don't talk about the process, you talk about the promise. When you do that, you capture attention and create interest. In relationships, speaking the language of value means asking yourself, how can I contribute to this person's peace, progress, or purpose? Value doesn't always mean giving money or advice. Sometimes it means giving time, attention, and respect. The smallest act of value can make the biggest difference when it's delivered with sincerity. People never forget how you made them feel important. When they feel valued, they value you in return. That's why leaders who consistently honor and uplift others build loyalty that no paycheck can buy. The language of value is also the language of service. True service is not about doing what's easy. It's about doing what's effective. It's anticipating needs before they're spoken, solving problems before they grow, and adding solutions where others add stress. When you live with the mindset of service, opportunities chase you because the world rewards those who make life better for others. Every problem you solve increases your influence because people follow problem solvers. The more problems you solve, the more valuable you become. Value is not a one-time act, it's a way of living. Every interaction, every conversation, every decision can either add or subtract value. When you walk into a room, your energy alone communicates value or drains it. Your presence can lift others or weigh them down. The person who constantly adds value, even through attitude and kindness, becomes a person people want around. That's the quiet power of social intelligence, understanding that your presence is either an investment or an expense to those around you. Speaking the language of value also means being able to communicate your own worth without arrogance. It's about confidence rooted in contribution. When you know the value you bring, you don't beg for attention or chase validation. You attract respect through results. You demonstrate value through consistency, excellence, and integrity. People may not remember every word you say, but they'll remember the experience of being around you. When your energy and actions consistently make others better, you'll never lack influence, opportunity, or connection. The world responds to value. The marketplace pays for value. Relationships thrive on value. And leadership is sustained by value. The question is never whether people see your effort, it's whether they feel your impact. Every conversation becomes meaningful when you focus less on what you can get and more on what you can give. Because when you learn to speak the language of value, you stop competing for attention and start commanding it through contribution. The more you understand people, the more influence you gain. Influence isn't demanded. It's earned through awareness, empathy, and consistency. People don't follow titles, they follow trust. And trust is built when people feel safe around your presence, certain in your character, and confident in your intentions. Influence begins when understanding begins. You cannot lead people you don't understand, and you can't understand people you don't take time to study. Every person you meet is shaped by experiences, fears, and expectations that guide their reactions and decisions. The person who learns to see through those layers becomes powerful, not because they control others, but because they can connect with them on a level most people never reach. Influence is not about persuasion, it's about perception. It's not about how loud you speak, but how deeply you see. When you can see someone's needs before they voice them, when you can sense their doubts before they confess them, You step into a position of quiet authority. People are naturally drawn to those who understand them. They lower their guard around those who make them feel seen. Influence flows to the person who listens when everyone else is talking, who notices when everyone else ignores, who leads with empathy instead of ego. Understanding requires patience. You can't understand people in a hurry. It takes time to listen without interrupting, to ask questions without assumptions, to observe without judgment. Most people want to be understood, but rarely take time to understand others. The one who reverses that pattern stands out. The moment people realize that your goal is not to win, but to understand, they start to trust your motives. When trust grows, influence follows naturally. Influence is built through empathy. Empathy doesn't mean agreeing with everything someone says. It means being willing to see from where they stand. It means entering their world long enough to feel what they feel without losing yourself in it. Empathy creates connection, and connection creates permission. People give permission to be led, taught, or inspired only when they believe you truly care. The mind may argue, but the heart always recognizes authenticity. Understanding people means you learn to interpret behavior instead of reacting to it. You stop asking what's wrong with them and start asking what happened to them. You realize that anger is often fear in disguise, arrogance is often insecurity dressed up, and silence is sometimes pain too deep to explain. The socially intelligent person doesn't take offense easily because they understand that most behavior is communication. The more you understand the message behind the behavior, the less likely you are to misinterpret it. Influence grows in the soil of consistency. People may be impressed by your words once, but they are influenced by your actions repeatedly. When your behavior aligns with your beliefs and your emotions stay steady through pressure, people start to rely on you. They trust what you say because they've seen what you do. Consistency communicates stability, and stability is magnetic in a chaotic world. People will always follow the one who brings peace to their confusion and clarity to their uncertainty. Understanding also requires humility. You can't learn about others while assuming you already know them. Every person is a universe of stories waiting to be discovered. When you lead with curiosity, you create a sense of respect. Curiosity says, you matter enough for me to learn about you. That's how influence expands, not by force, but by genuine interest. People who feel understood rarely resist guidance. They may not agree immediately, but they'll stay open because they sense that your goal is their growth, not your control. Influence is also about emotional stewardship. When you understand how emotions move people, you can lead them with compassion and clarity. The reactive leader drains people with unpredictability, but the emotionally steady leader inspires confidence. When you respond with grace under pressure, people feel protected. They see in you the strength they wish to embody. Influence is not about dominance, it's about direction. It's about creating emotional safety that allows others to perform at their best. The more you understand people, the easier it becomes to communicate effectively. You start tailoring your approach to fit the person instead of forcing everyone to fit your approach. You learn that some people need affirmation while others need challenge. Some respond to vision while others respond to validation. The wise communicator adjusts not their truth, but their tone, timing, and delivery so the message can be received. That's the art of influence, knowing how to say the right thing in the right way at the right time. Real influence doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It commands it through character. It's the quiet strength that comes from knowing people deeply and serving them sincerely. When you understand people, you no longer need to chase recognition. Your value becomes evident through the lives you impact. People remember how you made them feel understood long after they forget what you said. And the person who consistently understands, serves, and uplifts others becomes a voice that carries weight everywhere they go. Mastering social intelligence is not about being fake. It's about being fully aware. It's not about saying the right thing. It's about being the right person. When you grow in understanding, you grow in influence. And when you grow in influence, you grow in income, impact, and legacy. So stop trying to convince people. Start trying to connect with them. Because the one who can read and respond to people with love, truth, and wisdom is the one who can change the world.